Now, let's talk about adaptation of animals to terrestrial habitats. Still talking about structural adaptation. Now, animals possess lungs, for example, the vertebrates, and trachea, that is the insect, for gaseous exchange. So, animals found on terrestrial habitats have different structures that enables them to carry out gaseous exchange. So, in the vertebrates, it's the lungs, and in organisms like the insects, it's the trachea. Another adaptation is the possession of strong limbs that performs various functions like running, walking, climbing, and burrowing. For example, the vertebrates, they have what we call vestigial parts or limbs that enables them to perform various functions. Then another one is the possession of sweat gland for excretion and cooling on hot days. For example, the mammals. Human beings are an example of mammals. So when we sweat, that is just excretion and also for cooling the body on hot days. So that's an adaptation to survive in a terrestrial habitat. Now, let's discuss the structural adaptations of birds. Now, seed-eating birds, that means birds that eat seeds, have beaks adapted for picking seeds, and they also have conical beaks adapted for cracking seeds or not. So their beaks are conical so that you can easily pick the seeds and to also crack those seeds when they are eating them. Now also, birds of prey like the hawk, the eagle, and the owls, they have sharp curved beaks for tearing their prey, and they also have a strong claw for capturing and killing their prey. Another structural adaptation of the birds is possession of flat beaks. Example of birds that have that are the aquatic birds like the duck and the sea quails. They have flat beaks that are adapted for straining or shifting plants or animals that they want to feed from the water. And they also have claws for gripping fish and sieving muddy water from the food. So their beaks are adapted. They are long and flat for straining or pulling out plants and the animals from the aquatic habitats, like the fish. For example, the kingfisher bird. So the beak of the kingfisher bird is long and it is flat, so that I can easily pick the fish from the water. Another adaptation of birds, the aquatic birds especially, is webbed feet or webbed digits. That is adapted for swimming. So the digits or the feet of aquatic birds are webbed to enable them to swim or to float on water. Now, birds that eat insects like woodpeckers, they have beaks that are long and chiseled for boring into wood to eat the insects. So birds like the woodpeckers have long beaks that are also chiseled to enable them to bore or dig into the wood to find the insects to eat. Also, some birds like the crows have multi-purpose beaks that enable them to eat different types of food. To eat food like insects, seeds, fishes, and other animals. So their beaks are adapted to eat different kind of food. So birds like the crows have multi-purpose beaks. And another structural adaptation of the birds is the presence of feathers, which enclose a layer of air and helps to keep the bird warm. So the reason for the possession of feathers by birds is to keep the birds warm. Another one is the possession of scales on the leg and on the feet of the birds. When we check out most birds, they have scales on their feet or on their legs, and that is to reduce heat loss. Another adaptation of the birds is the presence of wings for flight. So birds have wings, which is obviously used for flying. That's a structural adaptation. Another one is the presence of eyes for seeing their prey. So the birds have a specialized eyes for specifically sighting their, for example, the vulture. The vulture's eyes are specialized to sight a prey from far off. That's why a vulture can, or a hawk can sight a prey from a very tall tree. Now let's move on to another animal, which is the toad. So let's talk about the structural adaptations of toad to its habitat. Now, toad possesses sticky tongue for catching its prey. That's why a a toad can stick out its tongue, like to catch a prey, for example, a housefly. When the toad sticks out its tongue, the housefly just sticks onto the tongue. So the tongue of a toad is sticky to catch its prey. And another one is the toads have strong hind limbs for hopping. So the hind limbs of a toad are strong specifically for it to hop. That's why a toad can hop from one place to another. Another one is the presence of bulging eyes in a toad to see in water. So the reason why a toad's eyes are bulging and big is to enable the toad to see properly in water. And another one is the toads also possess stout forelimbs for landing. So the hind limbs of the toad are strong for hopping, while the forelimbs are stout to enable it to land properly. Let's move on to another animal, which is the lizard. Now, the lizards have different structural adaptations. So let's talk about them. The lizards possess scales, and the reason for the scales is to reduce desiccation. Desiccation simply means drying out. So the scales are on the lizard to reduce desiccation, to reduce water loss. Another one is lizards can regenerate their lost tail when attacked. So lizards have the ability to grow a tail that has been lost, and this enables these lizards to escape from danger. Now let's move on to another animal, which is the snails. Now the snails possess shells, which is to prevent desiccation, that is to reduce water loss. So snails have a calcareous shells to prevent desiccation. Another structural adaptation of the snail is they secrete mucus, slimy mucus, to survive period of unfavorable conditions such as drought or heat. So when they secrete this mucus, they can stay in a state of rest, and that state of rest is called estivation. So this is a long period of dryness. So the snail can enter into that period of estivation to survive a hot or dry condition. Another structural adaptation of the snail is that they possess muscular foot, and the muscular foot has different functions. One of the functions is for movement. Then another structural adaptation of the snail is they possess tentacles for sight and sensitivity. Oculiferous tentacles. What I mean by oculiferous? It means these tentacles are adapted for seeing. So the tentacles found on the frontal part of the snail are used for seeing. So that's another structural adaptation of the snail. So with that, we've come to the end of today's class. Today's class, we've discussed types of adaptation and the adaptation of animals to terrestrial habitats and to aquatic habitats. Next class, we'll be taking each animal one after the other and talking about their adaptation to their specific habitat. See you next class.